To begin at the beginning. It is spring, moonless night in the small town, starless and Bible black, the cobble streets silent, and the hunched quarters and rabbit's wood limping invisible down to the slow black, crow-black fishing boat bobbing sea. The houses are blind as moles, though moles see fine tonight in the snouting velvet dingles, or blind as Captain Cat, there in the muffled middle by the pump and the town clock, the shops in mourning, the welfare hall in widow's weeds. And all the people of the lulled and dumbfound town are sleeping now. Hush, the babies are sleeping, the farmers, the fishers, the tradesmen and pensioners, cobbler, schoolteacher, postman and publican, the undertaker and the fancy woman, drunkard, dressmaker, preacher, policeman, the web-foot cockle women and the tidy wives. Young girls lie bedded soft or glide in their dreams with rings and trousseaux, bridesmaided by glowworms down the aisles of the organ-playing wood. The boys are dreaming wicked or of the bucking ranches of the night and the jolly Rogered sea. And the anthracite statues of the horses sleep in the fields, and the cows in the byres, and the dogs in the wet-nosed yards, and the cats nap in the slant corners, or lope sly streaking and needling on the one cloud of the roofs. You can hear the dew falling and the hushed town breathing. Only your eyes are unclosed to see the black and folded town fast and slow asleep. And you alone can hear the invisible starfall, the darkest before dawn, minutely dew-grazed stir of the black dab-filled sea, where the Arethusa, the curlew and the skylark, Phoebe and Sally and Mary Ann, Zanzibar, Rhiannon, the rover, the cormorant, and the star of Wales tilt and ride. Listen, it is night moving in the streets, the processional salt, slow musical wind in Coronation Street and Cockle Row. It is the grass growing on Thregob Hill, dewfall, starfall, the sleep of birds in Milkwood. Listen, it is night in the chill squat chapel hymning, in bonnet and brooch and bombazine black, butterfly choker and bootlace bow, coughing like nanny-goats sucking mintos, 40 winking hallelujah. Night in the 4-ale bar, quiet as a domino, in Ocky milkman's lofts like a mouse with gloves, in Dye-Bread's bakery flying like black flour. Listen, it is tonight in Donkey Street, trotting silent with seaweed on its hooves, along the cockled cobbles, past curtained fern-pot, text and trinket, harmonium, holy dresser, watercolors done by hand, china dog and rosy tin tea caddy. It is night, neddying among the snuggeries of babies. Look, it is night, dumbly, royally, winding through the Coronation cherry trees, going through the graveyard of Bethesda with winds gloved and folded and dew doffed, tumbling by the sailor's arms. Time passes. Listen, time passes. Come closer now. Only you can hear the houses sleeping in the streets, in the slow, deep, salt and silent, black bandaged night. Only you can see in the blinded bedrooms, the combs and petticoats over the chairs, the jugs and basins, the glasses of teeth. Thou shalt not on the wall, and the yellowing dicky bird watching pictures of the dead. Only you can hear and see behind the eyes of the sleepers the movements and countries and mazes and colors and dismays and rainbows and tunes and wishes and flight and fall and despairs and big seas of their dreams. From where you are, you can hear their dreams. Captain Cat, the retired blind sea captain, asleep in his bunk in the sea-shelled, ship-in-bottled, ship-shaped, best cabin of schooner house, dreams of
never such seas as any that swamped the decks of his SS Kidwelly, bellying over the bedclothes and jellyfish slippery sucking him down, salt deep into the davy dark, where the fish come biting out from behind the wet green wallpaper of the undersea, and nibble him down to his wishbone, and a long drown nuzzle up to him.
Remember me, Captain? You're Dancing William. I lost my step in Nantucket.
You see me, Captain, the white bone talking. I'm Tom Fred, the donkey man. We shared the same girl once. Her name was Mrs. Probert.
Rosie Probert, 33 Duck Lane. Come on up, boys. I'm dead.
Hold me, Captain. I'm Jonah Jarvis, come to a bad end. Very enjoyable.
Alfred Pomeroy Jones, sea lawyer, born in Mumbles, sung like a linnet, crowned you with a flagon, tattooed with mermaids, thirst like a dredger, died of blisters.
This skull at your ear hole is...
Curly Bevan, tell my auntie it was me that pawned the ormolu clock.
Aye, aye, Curly.
Tell my missus, no, I never
done what she said, I never.
Yes, they did.
And who brings coconuts and shawls and parrots to my Gwen now?
How's it above?
Is there rum and lava bread?
Bosoms and robins,
Concertinas,
Ebenezer's bell,
whiting and onions,
and sparrows and daisies,
tiddlers in a jam jar,
buttermilk and whippets,
rockabye babies,
washing on the line,
and old girls in the snug.
How's the tenors at Dowlice?
who milks the cows in Mayswin.
When she smiles, is there dimples?
What's the smell of parsley?
Oh, my dead dears.
From where you are, you can hear in Cockle Row, in the spring moonless night, Miss Price, dressmaker and sweet shopkeeper, dream of
Her lover, tall as the town clock tower, Samson syrup gold maned, whacking thighed and piping hot, thunderbolt based and barnacle breasted, flailing up the cockles with his eyes like glow lamps, and scooping low over her lonely, loving, hot water bottle body.
The Fonwy Price.
Mr. Mogg Edwards.
I am a draper mad with love. I love you more than all the flannelette and calico, candlewick, dimity, crash, and merino, tusar, cretonne, crepon, muslin, poplin, ticking and twill in the whole cloth hall of the world.
I have come to take you away to my emporium on the hill, where the change hums on wires. Throw away your little bed sock and your Welsh wool knitted jacket. I will warm the sheets like an electric toaster. I will lie by your side like the Sunday roast.
I will knit you a wallet of forget-me-not blue for the money to be comfy. I will warm your heart for the fire so that you can slip it in under your vest when the shop is closed.
Look, Fonwy, my Fonwy, before the mice gnaw at your bottom drawer, will you say...
Yes, Mom. Yes, Mom. Yes, yes, yes.
And all the bells of the tills of the town shall ring for our wedding.
Come now, drift up the dark, come up the drifting sea, dark street now in the dark night, see-sawing like the sea, to the Bible-black, airless attic over Jack Black, the cobbler's shop, where alone and savagely Jack Black sleeps in a nightshirt tied to his ankles with elastic, and dreams of
Chasing the naughty couples down the grass-green, gooseberry double bed of the wood, flogging the tosspots and the spit and sawdust, driving out the bare, bold girls from the sixpenny hops of his nightmare.
Akavi, Akavi.
And in the little pink-eyed cottage next to the cobbler's lie alone the 17 snoring gentle stone of Mr. Waldo, rabbit catcher, barber, herbalist, cat doctor, quack, his fat pink hands palms up over the edge of the patchwork quilt, his black boot neat and tidy in the washing basin, his bowler on a nail above the bed, a milk stout and a slice of cold bread pudding under the pillow. And dripping in the dark, he dreams of...
This little piggy went to market. This little piggy stayed at home. This little piggy had roast beef, and this little piggy had none. And this little piggy went...
Wee, 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 wee.
All the way home to...
Waldo! Waldo!
Yes, Bloodwind, love.
Oh, what'll the neighbors say? What'll the neighbors?
Poor Mrs. Waldo.
What she puts up with.
Never should have married.
She didn't have to.
Same as her mother.
There's a husband for you.
Bad as his father.
And you know where he ended?
Up in the asylum.
Crying for his ma.
Every Saturday.
He hasn't got a leg.
Carrying on.
That Mrs. Beatty Morris.
Up in the quarry.
And seen her baby.
It's got his nose.
It makes my heart bleed.
What he'll do for drink.
He sold the piano.
And her sewing machine.
Falling in the gutter.
Talking to the lamppost.
Using language.
Singing in the W.
Poor Mrs. Waldo. Oh, Waldo, Waldo.
Hush, love, hush. I'm widower, Waldo, now.
Waldo! Waldo!
Yes, Mum.
Oh, what'll the neighbors say? What'll the neighbors?
Black as a chin-blade.
Ringing doorbells.
Breaking windows.
Making mud pies.
Stealing currants.
Chalking words.
Saw him in the bushes.
Playing bookings.
Send him to bed without any supper.
Give him cenopods and lock him in the dock.
Off to the reformatory.
Off to the reformatory.
Learn him with a slipper on his BTM.
Waldo! Waldo! What are you doing with our Mattie?
Give us a kiss, Matty Richards.
Give us a penny then.
I only got a halfpenny.
Lips is a penny.
Will you take this woman, Matty Richards?
Dulcie Prothero.
Effie Bevan.
Lil the glue pot.
Mrs. Flusher.
Blodwyn Bowen.
To be your awful wedded wife?
No, no, no!
Now in her iceberg white, holily laundered crinoline nightgown, under virtuous polar sheets, in her spruced and scarred, dust-defying bedroom, in trig and trim bay view, a house for paying guests at the top of the town, Mrs. Ogmore Pritchard, widow twice, of Mr. Ogmore, linoleum, retired, and Mr. Pritchard, failed bookmaker, who, maddened by besaming, swabbing, and scrubbing, the voice of the vacuum cleaner and the fume of polish, ironically swallowed disinfectant. Fidgets in her rinsed sleep, wakes in a dream, and nudges in the ribs, dead Mr. Ogmore, dead Mr. Pritchard, ghostly on either side.
Mr. Ogmore, Mr. Pritchard, it is time to inhale your balsam.
Oh, Mrs. Ogmore.
Oh, Mrs. Pritchard.
Soon it will be time to get up. Tell me your tasks in order.
I must put my pajamas in the drawer marked pajamas.
I must take my cold bath, which is good for me.
I must wear my flannel band to ward off sciatica.
I must dress behind the curtain and put on my apron.
I must blow my nose
In the garden, if you please.
in a piece of tissue paper which I afterwards burn.
I must take my salts, which are nature's friend.
I must boil the drinking water because of germs,
I must make my herb tea, which is free from tannin.
and have a charcoal biscuit which is good for me.
I may smoke one pipe of asthma mixture,
In the woodshed, if you please.
and dust the parlor and spray the canary.
I must put on rubber gloves and search the peak for fleas.
I must dust the blinds, and then I must raise them.
And before you let the sun in, mind it wipes its shoes.
In Butcher Bynum's, Gossamer Bynum's daughter, school teacher, dreaming deep, daintily ferrets under a fluttering hammock of chicken's feathers in a slaughterhouse that has chintz curtains and a three-piece suite, and finds with no surprise a small, rough, ready man with a bushy tail winking in a paper carrier.
Help!
cries Organ Morgan, the organist, in his dream. There is perturbation and music in Coronation Street. All the spouses are honking like geese, and the babies singing opera. Police Constable Attila Evans has got his truncheon out and is playing cadenzas by the pump. The cows from Sunday Meadow ring like reindeer, and on the roof of Handel Villa see the women's welfare hoofing bloomers in the moon.
Lost, my love.
Sighs Gossamer Bynum, and the bushy tail wags rude and ginger.
At the sea end of town, Mr. and Mrs. Curly Floyd, the Cocklers, are sleeping as quiet as death, side by wrinkled side, toothless, salt and brown, like two old kippers in a box. And high above in Salt Lake Farm, Mr. Utah Watkins counts all night the white-faced sheep as they leap the fences on the hill, smiling and knitting and bleating, just like Mrs. Utah Watkins.
34, 35, 36, 48, 89.
Knit one, slip one, knit two together, pass the slip stitch over.
Ocky Milkman, drowned asleep in Cockle Street, is emptying his churns into the dewy river,
Regardless of expense.
and weeping like a funeral. Cherry Owen next door lifts a tankard to his lips, but nothing flows out of it. He shakes the tankard. It turns into a fish. He drinks the fish. Willy-nilly, postman, asleep up street, walks 14 miles and delivers the post in his dream, as he does every night. Sinbad Sailors hugs his pillow called Gossamer Bynum. A mogul catches Lily Smalls in the washhouse.
Oh, you old mogul.
Mrs. Rose Cottage's eldest maid is dreaming of tall, tower, white, furnace, cave, flower, ferret, waterfall, sigh, without any words at all.
Alone until she dies, Bessie, big-head, hired help, warm in the workhouse, smelling of the cowshed, snores bass baritone in Utah Watkins' attic, and picks a posy of daisies in Sunday Meadow to put on the grave of Gomer Owen, who kissed her once by the pigsty when she wasn't looking, and never kissed her again, although she was looking all the time. And the inspectors of cruelty fly down into Mrs. Butcher Bynum's dream to persecute Mr. Bynum for selling
Owl meat, dog's eyes, man chop.
My foxy darling.
Now behind the eyes and secrets of the dreamers in the streets rocked to sleep by the sea, see the
Titbits and topsy-turvies, bobs and button-tops, bags and bones, ash and rind and dandruff and nail parings, saliva and snowflakes and molted feathers of dreams, the wrecks and sprats and shells and fish bones, whale juice and moonshine, and small salt fry dished up by the hidden sea.
The owls are hunting. Look, over Bethesda gravestones, one hoots and swoops and catches a mouse by Hannah Reese, beloved wife. And in Coronation Street, which you alone can see, it is so dark under the chapel in the skies, Mr. Eli Jenkins, poet, preacher, Mrs. Organ Morgan, groceress, Butcher Bynum, Mr. Pugh, school teacher, and Mary Ann sailors turn in their deep towards dawn sleep and dream of
Silence.
Fishing for puffins.
Murder.
The river of John.
In Donkey Street, so furred with sleep, dye-bread, polygarter, no good boil, and Lord cut glass, sigh before the dawn that is about to be, and dream of
Herons.
Babies.
Nothing.
Tick-tock, 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 tick-tock.
Time passes. Listen, time passes. An owl flies home past Bethesda to a chapel in an oak, and the dawn inches up. Stand on this hill. This is the Regub Hill, old as the hills, high, cool, and green. And from this small circle of stones, made not by druids but by Mrs. Bynum's Billy, you can see all the town below you sleeping in the first of the dawn. The hill grazes on the lower fields, and the fields go down to the hazed town, rippling like a lake to drink.
Less than 500 souls inhabit the 3 quaint streets and the few narrow bylanes and scattered farmsteads that constitute this small, decaying watering place, which may indeed be called a backwater of life, without disrespect to its natives, who possess to this day a salty individuality of their own. The main street, Coronation Street, consists for the most part of humble 2-storied houses, many of which attempt to achieve some measure of gaiety by printing themselves out in crude colors and by the liberal use of pinkwash, though there are remaining a few 18th century houses of more pretension, if, on the whole, in a sad state of disrepair. Though there is little to attract the hill climber, the health seeker, the sportsman, or the week-ending motorist, the contemplative may, if sufficiently attracted to spare it some leisurely hours, find in its cobbled streets and its little fishing harbor, in its several curious customs, and in the conversation of its local characters, some of that picturesque sense of the past so frequently lacking in towns and villages which have kept more abreast of the times. The river Dewey is said to abound in trout, but is much poached. The one place of worship with its neglected graveyard is of no architectural interest.
A cock crows. The principality of the sky lightens now over our green hill into spring morning, larked and crowed and bellied. Who pulls the town hall bell rope but blind Captain Cat? One by one, the sleepers are wrung out of sleep this one morning as every morning, and soon you shall see the chimneys slow up-flying snow as Captain Cat in sailor's cap and sea boots announces today with his loud get-out-of-bed bell. The Reverend Eli Jenkins in Bethesda House gropes out of bed into his preacher's black, combs back his barbed white hair, forgets to wash, pads barefoot downstairs, opens the front door, stands in the doorway, and looking out at the day and up at the eternal hill, and hearing the sea break and the gab of birds, remembers his own verses and tells them softly to empty Coronation Street that is rising and raising its blinds. Dear Gwalior, I know there are towns lovelier than ours, and fairer hills and loftier far, and groves more full of flowers, and boskier woods more blithe with spring, and bright with birds adorning, and sweeter bards than I to sing their praise this beauteous morning. By Cadder Idris tempest torn, o'er mole of others' glory, Carneth Llewellyn beauty born, Plinlimmon old in story. By mountains where King Arthur dreams, by Penmine Mawr defiant, Llaregub hill, a molehill seems, a pygmy to a giant. By Southey, Senny, Dovey, Dee, Edu, Eden, Alled, all, Tarv and Towie, broad and free, Llanvant with its waterfall, Clairwen, Cleddau, Dallas, Door, Ellie, Willie, Ogor, Ned, small is our river, Dewey, Lord, a baby on a rushy bed. By Kerrikinnin, king of time, our ruin in the spinet, where owls do wink and squirrels climb, is aged but half a minute. By Strumble or by Dinner's Head, our heron head is only a bit of stone with seaweed spread, where gulls come to be lonely. A tiny dingle is Milkwood by Golden Grove 'neath Gronga. But let me choose, and oh, I should love all my life and longer to stroll among our trees and stray in Gusgog Lane on Donkey Down and hear the dewies sing all day and never, never leave the town.
The Reverend Jenkins closes the front door. His morning service is over.
Now, woken at last by the out-of-bed sleepyhead, Polly put the kettle on town hall bell. Lily Smalls, Mrs. Bynum's treasure, comes downstairs from a dream of royalty, who all night long went larking with her full of sauce in the Milkwood dark, and puts the kettle on the Primus ring in Mrs. Bynum's kitchen, and looks at her face in Mr. Bynum's shaving glass over the sink, and sees...
Ooh, there's a face. Where do you get that nose from, Lily? I got it from my father, silly. Ooh, there's a conk. Where do you get that hair from? I got it from an old tomcat. Ooh, there's a perm. Look at your complexion. Oh, no, you look. Needs a bit of makeup. Needs a veil. Oh, there's glamour. Where'd you get that smile, Will? Never you mind, girl. Nobody loves you. That's what you think. Who is it loves you? Chantal. Come on, Lily. Crush your heart, then? Cross my heart.
And very softly, her lips almost touching her reflection, she breathes the name and clouds the shaving glass.
Lily? Yes, Mum? Where's my tea, girl?
Where do you think? In the cat box? Coming up, Mum.
Mr. Pugh, in the schoolhouse opposite, takes up the morning tea to Mrs. Pugh and whispers on the stairs,
Here's your arsenic, dear. And your weed killer biscuit. I've throttled your parakeet. I've spat in the vases. I've put cheese in the mouse hole. Here's your nice tea, dear.
Too much sugar.
You haven't tasted it yet, dear.
Too much milk, then. Has Mr. Jenkins read his poetry?
Oh, yes, dear. He's indoors now.
And it's time to get up. Give me my glasses. No, not my reading glasses. I want to look out. I want to see.
Lily Smalls, the treasure, down on her red knees, washing the front step.
She's tucked her dress in her bloomers. Oh, the baggage.
P.C. Attila Evans, ox broad, barge booted, cumbering out in a heavy huff.
He's going to arrest Polly Gotta, mark my words.
What for, my dear?
For having babies.
And lumbering down towards the Strand to see that the sea is still there.
Mary Ann the sailors, opening her bedroom window above the tap room and calling out to the heaven.
I'm 85 years, 3 months, and a day.
I will say this for her, she never makes a mistake.
Organ Morgan at his bedroom window, playing chords on the sill to the morning fishwife gulls, who, crying over Donkey Street, observe,
Me, dyed bread, hurrying to the bakery, pushing in my shirt tails, buttoning my buttons. Ping goes a button. Why can't they sew them? No time for breakfast, nothing for breakfast. There's wives for you.
Me, Mrs. Dyebread One. Cap and shawl and no old corset. Nice to be comfy, nice to be nice. Clogging on the cobbles to stir up a neighbor. Oh, Mrs. Sarah, can you spare a loaf now? There's no bread in the house. How's your boils this morning?
Me?
Mrs. Diebread, too. Gaudy to kill in a tangerine jumper full of mothholes. Dirty yellow petticoat above my knees. Dirty, pretty knees. High-heeled shoes with one heel missing. Tortoiseshell comb in my bright black tousle. Nothing else. Lolling in the doorway, scowling at the sunshine, lighting up my pipe.
Me, Lord Cutglass, in an old frock coat belonged to Eli Jenkins, and a pair of postman's trousers from Bethesda Jumble, running out the doors to empty slops. Mind there, Rover, and then running in again, tick-tock.
Me, no good boyo, up to no good in the wash house.
Me, Miss Price, in my pretty print house coat, deft at the clothesline, natty as a jenny wren. Then pit-pat back to my egg in its cozy, my crisp toast fingers, my homemade plum and butter pat.
Me, Polly Garter, giving the breast in the garden to my new bonny baby, and listening to the voices in the voices of the blooming birds.
Now frying pans spit, kettles and cats purr in the kitchens. The town smells of seaweed and breakfast all the way down from Bayview, where Mrs. Ogmore Pritchard, in smock and turban, big besomed to engage the dust, picks at her starchless bread and sips lemon-rind tea. To Bottom Cottage, where Mr. Waldo, in bowler and bib, gobbles his bubble and squeak and kippers and swigs from the sauce bottle. Mary M., the sailors,
praises the Lord who made porridge.
Mr. Pugh
remembers ground glass as he juggles his omelette.
Mrs. Pugh
Nags the salt cellar.
Willy-nilly postman
Downs his last bucket of black brackish tea and rumbles out bandy to the clucking back, where the hens twitch and grieve for their tea-soaked sops.
Mrs. Willy-nilly
Full of tea to her double-chinned brim, broods and bubbles over her coven of kettles on the hissing hot hob, always ready to steam open the mail.
The Reverend Eli Jenkins
finds a rhyme and dips his pen in his cocoa.
Lord Cutglass, in his ticking kitchen, scampers from clock to clock, a bunch of clock keys in one hand, a fish head in the other.
Captain Cat in his galley,
blind and fine-fingered, flavors his sea fry.
Mr. and Mrs. Cherry Owen in their Donkey Street room, that is bedroom, parlor, kitchen, and scullery, sit down to last night's supper of onions boiled in their overcoats, and broth of spuds and bacon rind and bones.
See that smudge on the wall by the almanac? That's where you threw the gravy. You only missed me by an inch. And remember the fish bucket? Over you tumbled, flagons and all, and the floor was all eels, flatfish and blood.
Give me the onions.
Ooh, you were drunk as a deacon, and sprawling and bawling, and...
Give me a kiss.
And then you sang Aberystwyth. And then you did a dance on the table.
I did.
Drop dead.
And then what did I do?
Then you sang Aberystwyth all over again.
From Bynum Butcher's in Coronation Street, the smell of fried liver sidles out with onions on its breath. And listen, in the dark breakfast room behind the shop, Mr. and Mrs. Bynum, waited upon by their treasure, enjoy between bites their every morning hullabaloo, and Mrs. Bynum slips the gristly bits under the tasseled tablecloth to her fat cat.
She likes the liver, Ben.
Well, she ought to do best. It's her brother's.
Oh! Do you hear that, Lily?
Yes, Mum.
We're eating pusscat.
Yes, Mum.
Ooh, you cat butcher.
Well, it was doctored mine.
What's that got to do with it?
Yesterday we had Mo.
Oh, Lily!
Monday otter, Tuesday shrew.
Go on, Mrs. Bynum. He's the biggest liar in town.
Don't you dare say that about Mr. Bynum.
Everybody knows it, Mum.
Mr. Bynum never tells a lie. Do you, Ben?
No, Bess. And now I'm going out after corgis with my little cleaver.
Oh, Lily!
Up the street in the Sailor's Arms, Sinbad Sailor's grandson of Mary Ann the Sailor's draws a pint in the sunlit bar. The ship's clock in the bar says 11:30. 11:30 is opening time. The hands of the clock have stayed still at 11:30 for 50 years. It is always opening time in the Sailor's Arms.
Here's to me, Sinbad.
All over the town, babies and old men are cleaned and put into their broken prams and wheeled onto the sunlit cockled cobbles or out into the backyards under the dancing vests and left. A baby cries.
I want my pipe and he wants his bottle.
Noses are wiped, heads picked, hair combed, paws scrubbed, ears boxed, and the children shrilled off to school.
Fishermen grumble to their nets. No good boy goes out in the dinghy, Zanzibar. Ships the oars, drifts slowly in the dab-filled bay, lying on his back in the unveiled water, among crab's legs and tangled lines, looks up at the spring sky.
I don't know who's up there, and I don't care.
He turns his head and looks up at the Regub Hill and sees among green lathered trees the white houses of the strewn-away farms where farm boys whistle, dogs shout, cows low, but all too far away for him or you to hear. And in the town the shops squeak open. Mr. Mogg Edwards, in butterfly collar and straw hat at the doorway of Manchester House, measures with his eye the dawdlers by for striped flannel shirts and shrouds and flowery blouses, and bellows to himself in the darkness behind his eye.
I love Miss Price.
Syrup is sold in the post office. A car drives to market full of fowls and a farmer. Milk churns stand at Coronation Corner like short silver policemen. And sitting at the open window of Schooner House, blind Captain Cat hears all the mourning of the town. He hears the voices of children and the noise of children's feet on the cobbles.
Maggie Richards, Ricky Reese, Tommy Powell, our Sal, Little Gerwine, Billy Swansea with the dog's voice, one of Mr. Waldo's, Nasty Humphrey, Jackie with the sniff. Well, where's Dickie's Albee and the boys from Teapot? Perhaps they got a rash again. Oh, somebody hit Matty Richards. 2-1, it's Billy Swansea. Never trust a boy who barks. Right again, that's Billy.
And the children's voices cry away.
That's willy-nilly knocking at Bayview. Rat-tat-tat, very soft. The knocker's got a kid glove on. Who sent a letter to Mrs. Ogmore Pritchard? Careful now, she swabs the front glassy. Every step's like a bar of soap. Mind your size 12s. That old Bessie would beeswax the lawn to make the birds slip.
Morning, Mrs. Ogmore Pritchard.
Good morning, Postman.
Here's a letter for you with stamped and addressed envelope enclosed, all the way from Bill Wells. A gentleman wants to study birds, and can he have accommodation for 2 weeks and about? Vegetarian.
No.
Oh, you wouldn't know he was in the house, Mrs. Ogmore Pritchard. He'd be out in the mornings at the bang of dawn with his bag of breadcrumbs and his little telescope.
And come home at all hours covered with feathers. I don't want persons in my nice, clean rooms breathing all over the chairs.
Oh, cross my heart. He won't breathe.
And putting their feet on my carpets and sneezing on my china and sleeping in my sheets.
Well, he only wants a single bed, Mrs. Ogmore Pritchard.
And back she goes to the kitchen to polish the potatoes.
Captain Cat hears willy-nilly's feet heavy on the distant cobble.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, it's Mrs. Rose Cottage. What's today? Today she gets the letter from her sister in Gorse Glass. How's the twins' teeth? 6, 7, 8. Plain sealed brown envelope from Liverpool for the lodger in Craggy Don. Don't stick a pin in it, Willie. 9, 10.
11, 12, 13. He's stopping at schoolhouse.
Morning, Mrs. Pugh. Mrs. Ogmore Pritchard won't have a gentleman in from Bilth Wells because he'll sleep in her sheets. Mrs. Rose Cottage's sister and Gorsglass's twins have got to have them out.
Give me the parcel.
It's for Mr. Pugh, Mrs. Pugh.
Never you mind. What's inside it?
A book called Lives of the Great Poisoners.
That's Manchester House.
Morning, Mr. Edwards. Very small news. Mrs. Ogmore Pritchard won't have birds in the house, and Mr. Pugh's bought a book now on how to do in Mrs. Pugh. And there's careful the lodger is getting in Craggy Don.
Have you got a letter from her?
Miss Price loves you with all her heart. Smelling of lavender today. She's down to the last of the elderflower wine, but the quince jam's bearing up, and she's knitting roses on the doilies. Last week she sold 3 jars of boiled sweets, pound of humbugs, half a box of jelly babies, and 6 colored photos of Lorega. Yours forever, then 21 X's.
Oh, willy-nilly, she's a ruby. Here's my letter. Put it in her hands now.
Down the street comes willy-nilly, and Captain Cat hears other steps approaching.
Mr. Waldo hurrying to the Sailor's Arms. Pint of stout with an egg in it. There's a letter for him.
It's another paternity summons, Mr. Waldo.
The quick footsteps hurry on along the cobbles and up 3 steps to the Sailor's Arms.
Quick, Sinbad, pint of stout and no egg in.
People are moving up and down the cobbled street.
All the women are out this morning in the sun. You can tell it's spring. There goes Mrs. Cherry. You can tell her by her hooves. Off she trots, new as a daisy. Who's that talking by the pump? Mrs. Floyd and Boyle talking flatfish. Now, what can you talk about flatfish? And that's Mrs. Diebread 1, waltzing up the street like a jelly. Every time she shakes, it's slap, slap, slap. Who's that? Mrs. Butcher Bynum with her pet black cat. Follows her everywhere, meow and all. Oh, there goes Mrs. 23. Important. The sun gets up and goes down in her dewlap. When she shuts her eyes, it's night. High heels now, in the morning too. Mrs. Rose Cottage's eldest, May, 17 and never been kissed, ho-ho. Going young and milking under my window to the field with the nanny goats. She reminds me all the way. Can't hear what the women are gabbing round the pump? Well, same as ever. Who's having a baby? Who black? Whose eye? Seen Polly Gotter giving her belly an airing? There should be a law. Seen Mrs. Bynum's new mauve jumper? It's her old grey jumper dyed. Who's dead? Who's dying? There's a lovely day. Oh, the cost of soap flakes. Morgan's at it early. You can tell it's spring.
And he hears the noise of milk cans.
Ocky milkman on his round. I will say this, his milk's as fresh as the dew. Half dew it is. Snuffle on, Ocky, watering the town. Oh, somebody's coming. Now the voices round the pump can see somebody's coming. Hush! There's a hush. You can tell by the noise of the hush. It's Polly Gotter. Hello, Polly, who's there?
Me, love.
That's Polly Gotter. Hello, Polly, my love.
Can you hear the dumb goose hiss of the wives as they huddle and peck or flounce at a waddle away? Who cuddled you when? Which of their gandering hubbies moaned in Milkwood for your naughty mothering arms and body like a wardrobe love? Scrub the floors of the welfare hall for the Mothers' Union social dance. Your one mother won't wriggle her roly-poly bum or pat her fat little buttery foot in that wedding-ringed holy tonight, though the waltzing breadwinners snatched from the cozy smoke of the Sailor's Arms will grizzle and mope.
A cock crows.
Too late, cock, too late.
For the town's half over with its mourning. The morning's busy as bees.
There's the clip-clop of horses on the sun-honeyed cobbles of the humming streets, hammering of horseshoes, Gobble, quack, and cackle, tom-tit-twitter from the bird-ounce boughs, braying on donkey down. Bread is baking, pigs are grunting, chop goes the butcher, milk churns bell, tills ring, sheep cough, dogs shout, saws sing. Oh, the spring whinny and morning moo from the clog dancing farms. The gulls gab and rabble on the boat-bobbing river and sea, and the cockles bubbling in the sand. Scamper of sonderlings, curlew cry, crow caw, pigeon coo, clock strike, bull bellow, and the ragged gabble of the slovenly bear garden school as the women scratch and babble in Mrs. Organ Morgan's general shop where everything is sold. Custard, buckets, henna, rat traps, cenopods, shrimp nets, sugar, stamps, confetti, paraffin, hatchets, whistles.
Mrs. Ogmore Pritchard.
La-di-da.
Got a man in built well.
And he got a little telescope to look at birds.
Willy-nilly said.
Remember her first husband? He didn't need a telescope.
He looked at them undressing through the keyhole.
And he used to shout, "Tally-ho!"
But Mr. Ogmore was a proper gentleman.
Even though he hanged his collie.
See Mrs. Butcher Bynum.
She said Butcher Bynum puts dogs in the mincer.
Oh, go on, he's pulling a leg.
Now, don't you dare tell her that there's a deer.
Or she'll think he's trying to pull it off and eat it.
There's a nasty lot live here when you come to think.
Look at that no-good boy now.
Too lazy to wipe his snout.
And going out fishing every day. And all he ever brought back was a Mrs. Samuels.
Been in the water a week.
And look at Ocky Milkman's wife that nobody's ever seen.
He keeps her in the cupboard with the empties.
And think of dye bread with 2 wives.
One for the daytime, one for the night.
Men are brutes on the quiet.
And how's Organ Morgan, Mrs. Morgan?
You look dead beat.
It's organ all the time with him. Up every night until midnight playing the organ.
Oh, I'm a martyr to music.
Outside, the sun springs down on the rough and tumbling town. It runs through the hedges of Gusgog Lane, cuffing the birds to sing. Spring whips scream down Cockle Row, and the shells ring out. Llanrugh, the snip of a morning is wild fruit and warm, the streets, fields, sands and waters springing in the young sun.
Thomas the Deaf presses hard, with black gloves on the coffin of his breast, in case his heart jumps out.
Where's your dignity? Lie down.
Spring stirs Gossamer Bynum, schoolmistress, like a spoon.
Oh, what can I do? I'll never be refined if I twitch.
Spring, this strong morning, foams in a flame in Jack Black as he cobbles a high-heeled shoe for Mrs. Diebread, too, the gypsy. But he hammers it sternly out.
There is no leg belonging to the foot that belongs to this shoe.
The sun and the green breeze shift Captain Cat sea memory again.
Now I'll take the mulatto. By God, who's captain here? Parlez-vous jig-jig, madame?
Mary Ann Sailors says very softly to herself as she looks out at Llanrugh Hill from the bedroom where she was born.
It is spring in Narrator, in the sun, in my old age. And this is the chosen land.
And in willy-nilly the postman's dark and sizzling, damp, tea-coated, misty, pygmy kitchen where the spitting cat kettles throb and hop on the range, Mrs. Willy-nilly steams open Mr. Mogg Edwards's letter to Miss McKenna Price and reads it aloud to willy-nilly by the squint of the spring sun through the one-sealed window running with tears, while the drugged, bedraggled hens at the back door whimper and snivel for their licorice bog-black teeth.
From Manchester House, Llanrugh, sole prop, Mr. Mogg Edwards, later Bryn Hybrid, linen draper, haberdasher, master tailor, costumier for West End negligee, lingerie, tea gowns, evening dress, trousseau, layette, also ready to wear for all occasions, economical outfitting for agricultural employment, our specialty, wardrobes bought. Among our satisfied customers, ministers of religion and JPs, fittings by appointment, advertising weekly in the Bryn Hybrid Bugle. beloved M'Fan we price, my bride in heaven.
I love you until death do us part, and then we shall be together forever and ever. A new parcel of ribbons has come from Carmarthen today, all the colours in the rainbow. I wish I could tie a ribbon in your hair, a white one, but it cannot be. I dreamed last night you were all dripping wet and you sat in my lap as the Reverend Jenkins went down the street. I see you got a mermaid in your lap, he said, and he lifted his hat. He's a proper Christian.
Not like Cherry Owen, who said you should have thrown her back, he said.
Business is very poorly. Polly Goddard bought 2 garters with roses, but she never got stockings, so what's the use, I say. Butcher Bynum bought a check cap to go badgering, he said. Mr. Waldo tried to sell me a woman's nightie outsized. He said he found it, and we know where. I sold a packet of pins to Tom the Sailor to pick his teeth. If this goes on, I shall be in the poorhouse. My heart is in your bosom, and yours is in mine. God be with you always, M'Fan we price, and keep you lovely for me in his heavenly mansion. I must stop now and remain your eternal Margettis.
And then a little message with a rubber stamp, shop at Moggs.
And willy-nilly, rumbling jockeys out again to the 3-seated shack called the House of Commons in the back where the hens weep, and sees in sudden springshine
herring gulls heckling down to the harbor, where the fishermen spit and prop the morning up, and eye the fishy sea smooth to the sea's end as it lulls in blue. Green and gold money, tobacco, tinned salmon, hats with feathers, pots of fish paste, warmth for the winter to be, weave and leap in it, rich and slippery in the flash and shapes of fishes through the cold sea streets. But with blue, lazy eyes, the fishermen gaze at that milk-mild, whispering water, with no ruck or ripple, as though it blew great guns and serpents and typhooned the town.
2 ruck for fishing today.
And they thank God, and God but a gull for luck, and moss slow and silent make their way uphill from the still, still sea towards the sailor's arms, as the children
stank and scamper, rough and singing, out of school into the draggletail yard. And Captain Cat at his window says soft to himself the words of their song.
Johnny Crack and Flossie Snail kept their baby in a milking pail. Flossie Snail and Johnny Crack, one would pull it out and one would put it back. Oh, it's my turn now, said Flossie Snail, to take the baby from the milking pail. And it's my turn now, said Johnny Crack, to smack it on the head and put it back. Johnny Crack and Flossie Snail kept their baby in a milking pail. One would put it back and one would pull it out, and all it had to drink was ale and stout, for Johnny Crack and Flossie Snail always used to say that stout and ale was good for a baby in a milking pail.
The music of the spheres is heard distinctly over Milkwood. That music is the rustle of spring.
A glee party sings in Bethesda graveyard, gay but muffled.
Vegetables make love above the tenor.
And the dogs bark blue in the face.
Mrs. Ogmore Pritchard belches in a teeny hanky and chases the sunlight with a fly whisk. But even she cannot drive out the spring. From one of the finger bowls, a primrose grows.
Mrs. Diebread 1 and Mrs. Diebread 2 are sitting outside their house in Donkey Lane, one darkly, one plumply blooming in the quicky, dewy sun. Mrs. Diebread 2 is looking into a crystal ball, which she holds in the lap of her dirty yellow petticoat, hard against her hard, dark thighs.
Cross my palm with silver, out of the housekeeping money. Ah!
What do you see, lovey?
I see a feather bed with 3 pillows on it, and a text above the bed. I can't read what it says. There's great clouds blowing. How they've blown away. God is love, the text says.
That's our bed.
Now it's vanished. The sun's spinning like a top. Who's this coming out of the sun? It's a hairy little man with big pink lips. He's got a wall eye.
It's dye. It's dyed red.
The bed's floating back. The little man's taking his boots off. He's pulling his shirt over his head. He's beating his chest with his fists. He's climbing into bed.
Go on, go on.
There's 2 women in bed. He looks at them both with his head cocked on one side. He's whistling through his teeth. Now he grips his little arms round one of the women.
Which one? Which one?
I can't see anymore. There's great clouds blowing again.
Oh, the mean old clouds.
The morning is all singing. The Reverend Eli Jenkins, busy on his morning calls, stops outside the welfare hall to hear Polly Garter as she scrubs the floors for the Mothers' Union dance tonight.
I loved a man whose name was Tom. He was strong as a bear and 2 yards long. I loved a man whose name was Dick. He was big as a barrel and 3 feet thick. And I loved a man whose name was Harry, 6 feet tall and sweet as a cherry. But the one I loved best, awake or asleep, was little Willie Wee, and he's 6 feet deep. Oh, Tom, Dick, and Harry were 3 fine men, and I'll never have such lovin' again. But little Willie Wee, who took me on his knee, little Willie Weasel was the man for me. Now men from every parish round run after me and roll me on the ground. But whenever I love another man back, Johnny from the hill or Sailing Jack, I always think as they do what they please. Tom, Dick, and Harry, who are tall as trees. But most I think, when I'm by their side, of little Willie Wee, who drowned and died. Oh, Tom, Dick, and Harry were 3 fine men, and I'll never have such lovin' again. But little Willie Wee, who took me on his knee, little Willie Weasel is the man for me.
Praise the Lord, we are a musical nation. And the Reverend Jenkins hurries on through the town to visit the sick with jelly and pearls.
The town's as full as a lovebird's egg.
There goes the Reverend.
There's Mr. Waldo at the smoked herring-brown window of the unwashed Sailor's Arms.
With his brolly and his oaths. Fill 'em up, Sinbad, I'm on the treacle today.
The silent fishermen flush down their pints.
Oh, Mr. Waldo.
Sigh Sinbad, sailors.
I dote on that gossamer Bynum.
Love sings the spring. The bed-spring grass bounces under birds' bums and land.
And Gossamer Bynum, school teacher, spoon-stirred and quivering, teaches her slubbity-gullion class.
It was the lover and his horse with a hay and how and hay and now, your innocent children. It was a lover and his left with a he and a who and a he none knew.
Oh, Mr. Waldo.
Says Sinbad, sailor.
She's a lady all over.
And Mr. Waldo, who is thinking of a woman soft as Eve and sharp as sciatica to share his bread pudding bed, answers,
No lady that I know is.
And if only Grandma died, cross my heart, I'd go down on my knees, Mr. Waldo, and I'd say, Miss Gossamer, I'd say,
When birds do sing, a ding-a-ding-a-ding, sweet lovers love the spring.
Polly Garter sings, still on her knees.
Tom, Dick, and Harry were 3 fine men, and I'll never have such
Ding-a-ding
again.
And the morning school is over, and Captain Cat at his curtained schooner's porthole open to the spring sun tides hears the naughty, forfeiting children tumble and rhyme on the cobbles.
Gwenny called the boys, they make such a noise. Boys, 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 come along to me. Boys, 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 kiss Gwenny where she says, or give her a penny. Go on, Gwenny. Kiss me in Goosegard Lane, or give me a penny. What's your name?
Billy?
Kiss me in Goosegard Lane, Billy, or give me a penny, silly.
Gwenny, I kiss you in Goosegard Lane. Now I haven't got to give you a penny.
Boys, 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 kiss Gwenny where she says, or give her a penny. Go on, Gwenny. Kiss me on the leg of hill, or give me a penny. What's your name?
Johnny Christo.
Kiss me on the leg of hill, Johnny Christo, or give me a penny, mister.
Gwenny, I kiss you on the leg of hill. Now I haven't got to give you a penny.
Boys, 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 kiss Gwenny where she says, or give her a penny. Go on, Gwenny. Kiss me in Milkwood, or give me a penny. What's your name?
Dickie?
Kiss me in Milkwood, Dickie, or give me a penny, quickly.
Gwenny, I can't kiss you in Milkwood.
Gwenny, ask him why. Why?
Because my mother said I mustn't.
Cowdy, custard, give Gwenny a penny, give me a penny.
I haven't got any.
Put him in the river, up to his liver. Quick, dirty Dick, beat him on the butt with a rhubarb stick. Aye!
And the shrill girls giggle and master around him and squeal as they clutch and thrash, and he blubbers away downhill with his patched pants falling, and his tear-splashed blush burns all the way as the triumphant bird-like sisters scream with buttons in their claws, and the bully brothers hoot after him his little nickname, and his mother's shame, and his father's wickedness with the loose, wild, barefoot women of the hovels of the hills. It all means nothing at all, and howling for his milky mum, for her cow and buttermilk and cow breath and Welsh cakes and the fat birth-smelling bed and moonlit kitchen of her arms. He'll never forget as he paddles blind home through the weeping end of the world. Then his tormentors tussle and run to the Cockle Street sweet shop, their pennies sticky as honey, to buy for Miss McKenna Price, who is cocky and neat as a puff-bosomed robin, and her small round buttocks tight as ticks, gobstoppers big as wens that rainbow as you suck, humbugs, wine gums, a hot pen'orth of brandy balls, hundreds and thousands, liquor as sweet as sick, tooth-loosening toffee of tar, nugget to tug and ribbon out like another red rubbery tongue, gum to glue in girls' curls, crimson cough drops to spit blood, stale bags of black-boiled marbles, ice cream cornets, dandelion and burdock, raspberry and cherryade, pop goes the weasel and the wind. Gossamer Bynum, high heels out of school. The sun hums down through the cotton flowers of her dress into the bell of her heart, and buzzes in the honey there, and couches and kisses, lazy loving and boozed in her red-berried breast. Eyes run from the trees and windows of the streets steaming gossamer, and strip her to the nipples and the bees. She blazes naked past the sailor's arms, the only woman on the die-atomed earth. Sinbad sailors, places on her thighs, still dew-damp from the first man-growing cockcrow garden, his reverent goat-bearded hand.
I don't care if he is common.
She whispers to her salad-day deep self.
I want to gobble him up. I don't care if he does drop his H's.
She tells the stripped and mother of the world, big-beamed and eve-hipped spring of herself.
So long as he's all cucumber and hooves.
Sinbad sailors watches her go by, demure and proud and school-mom, in her crisp flowered dress and sun-defying hat, with never a look or lilt or wriggle, the butcher's unmelting ice-maiden daughter, veiled forever from the hungry hug of his eyes.
Oh, Gossamer Bynum, why are you so proud?
He grieves to his Guinness.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful gossamer bee. I wish you weren't so educated.
She feels his goat beard tickle her in the middle of the world, like a tuft of wiry fire, and she turns in a terror of delight, away from his whips and whiskery conflagration, and sits down in the kitchen to a plate heaped high with chips and the kidneys of lambs.
In the blind-drawn dark dining room of schoolhouse, dusty and echoing as a dining room in a vault, Mr. and Mrs. Poole are silent over cold grey cottage pie. Mr. Poole reads as he forks the shroud meat in from Lives of the Great Poisoners. He has bound a plain brown paper cover over the book. Slyly, between slow mouthfuls, he side-spies up at Mrs. Poole, poisons her with his eye, then goes on reading. He underlines certain passages and smiles in secret.
Persons with manners do not read at tables,
Says Mrs. Poole. She swallows a digestive tablet as big as a horse pill, washing it down with clouded pea soup water.
Some persons were brought up in pigsties.
Pigs don't read at table, dear.
Bitterly she flicks dust from the broken cruet. It settles on the pie in a thin gnat ring.
Pigs can't read, my dear.
I know one who can.
Alone in the hissing laboratory of his wishes, Mr. Poole minces among bad vats and Jeroboams, tiptoes through spinneys of murdering herbs, agony dancing in his crucibles, and mixes, specially for Mrs. Poole, a venomous porridge unknown to toxologists, which will scald and viper through her until her ears fall off like figs. Her toes grow big and black as balloons, and steam comes screaming out of her navel.
You know best, dear.
Says Mr. Poole, and quick as a flash he ducks her in rat soup.
What's that book by your trough, Mr. Poole?
It's a theological work, my dear. Lives of the Great Saints.
Mrs. Poole smiles. An icicle forms in the cold air of the dining vault.
I saw you talking to a saint this morning, Saint Polygata. She was martyred again last night. Mrs. Morgan saw her with Mr. Waldo.
And when they saw me, they pretended they were looking for nets.
Said Mrs. Organ Morgan to her husband, with her mouth full of fish as a pelican.
But you don't go nesting in long combinations, I said to myself, like Mr. Waldo was wearing, and you're dressed nearly over your head like Polygarthus. Oh, they didn't fool me.
One big bird gulp and the flounder's gone. She licks her lips and goes stabbing again.
And when you think of all those babies she's got, then all I can say is she'd better give up bird nesting. That's all I can say. It isn't the right kind of hobby at all for a woman that can't say no even to midgets. Remember Tom Spit? He wasn't any bigger than a baby, and he gave her two. But they're two nice boys, I will say that, Di Spit and Arthur. Sometimes I like Di best, and sometimes I like Arthur. Who do you like best, Organ?
Bach, without any doubt. Bach every time for me.
Organ, Morgan, you haven't been listening to a word I said. It's organ, organ, all the time with you.
And she bursts into tears, and in the middle of her sultry howling, nimbly spears a small flatfish and pelicans it holds.
And then Palestrina,
says Organ Morgan.
Lord Cutglass, in his kitchen full of time, squats down alone to a dog dish marked Fido of peppery salt scraps and listens to the voices of his 66 clocks, one for each year of his loony age, and watches with love their black and white moony, loud-lipped faces talking the earth away. Slow clocks, quick clocks, pendulum heart knocks, china, alarm, grandfather, cuckoo. Clocks shaped like Noah's whirring ark, clocks that bicker in marble ships, clocks in the wombs of glass women, hourglass chimers, to-wit-to-woo clocks, clocks that pluck tunes, Vesuvius clocks, all black bells and lava, Niagara clocks that cataract their ticks, old time-weeping clocks with ebony beards, clocks with no hands, forever drumming out time without ever knowing what time it is. His 66 singers are all set at different hours. Lord Cutglass lives in a house and a life at siege. Any minute or dark day now, the unknown enemy will loot and savage downhill, but they will not catch him napping. 66 different times in his fish-slimy kitchen, ping, strike, tick, chime, and talk.
The lust and lilt and ladder, an emerald breeze and crackle of the bird praise, and the body of spring with its breast full of rivering May milk, means to that lordly fish-head nibbler nothing but another nearness to the tribes and navies of the last black day, who'll sear and pillage down Armageddon Hill to his double-locked, rusty-shuttered, tick-tock, dust-scrabbled shack at the bottom of the town that has fallen head over bells in love.
And I'll never have such lovin' again.
Pretty Polly hums and longs.
Now when farmers' boys on the first fair day come down from the hills to drink and be gay, before the sun sinks, I'll lie there in their arms, for they're good bad boys from the lonely farms. But I always think, as we tumble into bed, of little Willie Wee, who is dead, dead, dead.
The sunny, slow, lulling afternoon yawns and moons through the dozy town. The sea lolls, laps, and idles in with fishes sleeping in its lap. The meadow still as Sunday, the shut-eye, tasseled bulls, the goat and daisy dingles nap happy and lazy. The dumb duck pond snooze, clouds sag and pillow on Clerego Hill. A pride of pigs grunts in a wet wallow bath and smile as they snort and dream. They dream of the acorn swill of the world, the rooting for pig fruit, the bagpipe dugs of the mother sow, the squeal and snuffle of yeses of the women pigs in rut. They mud bask and snout in the pig-loving sun. Their tails curl. They rollick and slobber and snore to deep, smug after swill sleep. Donkeys angelically drowse on donkey down.
Persons with manners,
Snaps Mrs. Cole Pugh.
do not nod at table.
Mr. Pugh cringes awake. He tries to put on a soft, soaping smile. It is sad and grey under his nicotine egg-yellow, weeping walrus Victorian moustache, worn thick and long in memory of Dr. Crippen.
You should wait until you retire to your sty,
Says Mrs. Pugh, sweet as a razor. His fawning, measly quarter smile freezes. Sly and silent, he foxes into his chemist's den, and there, in a hiss and prussic circle of cauldrons and phials, brimful with pox and the Black Death, cooks up a fricassee of deadly nightshade, nicotine, hot frog, cyanide, and bat spit for his needling stalactite hag and bednag of a poker-backed nutcracker wife.
I beg your pardon, my dear.
He murmurs with a wheedle.
Captain Cat at his wide window slumbers and voyages, tattooed and earringed and rolling on the old clippered sea, brawls with broken bottles in the fug and babel of the dark dock bars, has a herd of short and good-time cows in every naughty port, tattooed with Union Jacks and little women who hula, shimmy, and ripple, and I love you, Rosie Probert, on his belly. He roves those Dead Sea days, and the drowned and cutthroat hair-dyed, high-breasted schooner and harbor town dead go with him dancing and slashing and making ghosts love, and the tears run down his grog-blossomed nose.
One voice of all he remembers most dearly as his dream buckets down. Lazy, early Rosie with the flaxen thatch, whom he shared with Tom Fred, the donkeyman, and many another seaman, clearly and near to him speaks from the bedroom of her dust. In that gulf and haven, fleets by the dozen have anchored for the little heaven of the night, but she speaks to Captain Napping Cat alone. Mrs. Probert.
From Duck Lane, Jack, quack twice and ask for Rosie.
Is the one love of his sea life that was sardined with women.
What seas did you see, Tomcat, in your sailoring days long, long ago? What sea beasts were in the wavery green when you were my master?
I'll tell you the truth. Seas barking like seals, blue seas and green, seas covered with eels and mermen and whales.
What seas did you sail, old whaler, when on the blubbery waves between Frisco and Wales you were my bosun?
As true as I'm here, dear, you tomcat's tot, you landlubber Rosie, you cozy love, my easy as easy, my true sweetheart. Seas green as a bean, seas gliding with swans in the seal-barking moon.
What seas were rocking, my little deckhand, my favorite husband, in your sea boots and hunger, my duck, my whaler, my honey, my daddy, my pretty sugar sailor with my name on your belly, when you were a boy, long, long ago.
I'll tell you no lies. The only sea I saw was the seesaw sea with you riding on it. Lie down, lie easy. Let me shipwreck in your thighs.
Knock twice, Jack, at the door of my grave, and ask for Rosie.
Rosie Probert?
Remember her. She is forgetting. The earth which filled her mouth is vanishing from her. Remember me. I have forgotten you. I am going into the darkness of the darkness forever. I have forgotten that I was ever born.
Look.
Says a child to her mother as they pass by the window of Schooner House.
Captain Cat is crying.
Captain Cat is crying.
Come back! Come back!
Up the silences and echoes of the passages of the eternal night.
He's crying all over his nose,
says the child. Mother and child move on down the street.
He's got a nose like strawberries,
the child says, and then she forgets him too. She sees in the still middle of the blue-bagged bay no good boyo fishing from the Zanzibar.
No good boyo gave me 3 pennies yesterday, but I wouldn't.
The child tells her mother.
Boyo catches a whalebone corset. It is all he has caught all day.
Bloody funny fish.
Mrs. Diebread, too, gypsies up his mind's slow eye, dressed only in a bangle.
She's wearing her nightgown. Would you like this nice wet corset, Miss Diebread, too?
No, I won't.
And a bite of my little apple?
He offers with no hope.
She shakes her brass nightgown, and he chases her out of his mind, and when he comes gusting back, there in the bloodshot center of his eye, a geisha girl grins and bows in a kimono of rice paper.
I want to be good, boyo, but nobody will let me.
He sighs as she rides politely. The land fades, the sea flocks silently away, and through the warm white clouds where he lies silky, tingling uneasy eastern music, undoes him in a Japanese minute.
The afternoon buzzes like lazy bees round the flowers round May Rose Cottage. Nearly asleep in the field of nanny goats who hum and gently butt the sun, she blows love on a puffball.
He loves me. He loves me now. He loves me. He loves me now. He loves me. Dirty old fool.
Lazy, she lies alone in clover and sweetgrass. 17, and never been sweet in the grass. Ho, ho.
The Reverend Eli Jenkins, inky in his cool front parlor or poem room, tells only the truth in his life work. The population, main industry, shipping, history, topography, flora, and fauna of the town he worships in. The White Book of Florego. Portraits of famous bards and preachers, all fur and wool from the squint to the kneecaps, hang over him heavy as sheep, next to faint lady watercolors of pale green milkwood like a lettuce salad dying. His mother, propped against a pot in a palm, with her wedding ring waist and bust like a black-clothed dining table, suffers in her stays. Oh, angels, be careful there with your knives and forks, he prays. There is no known likeness of his father Esau, who, undog-collared because of his little weakness, was then scythed to the bone one harvest by mistake when sleeping with his weakness in the corn. He lost all ambition and died with one leg. Poor Dad,
grieved the Reverend Eli,
to die of drink and agriculture.
Farmer Watkins in Salt Lake Farm hates his cattle on the hill as he hoes them into milking.
Damn you, you damn darlings!
A cow kisses him.
Bite it up there!
He shouts to his deaf dog who smiles and licks his hand.
Gore him! Sit on him, Daisy!
He bawls to the cow who barbed him with her tongue, and she moos gentle words as he raves and dances among his summer-breathed slaves walking delicately to the farm. The coming of the end of the spring day is already reflected in the lakes of their great eyes. Bessie Bighead greets them by the names she gave them when they were maidens.
Pig, Meg, Buttercup, Moll, Fan from the Castle, Theodosia, and Daisy.
They bow their heads.
Look up Bessie Bighead in the White Book of Florego, and you will find the few haggard rags and the one poor glittering thread of her history laid out in pages there with as much love and care as the lock of hair of a first lost love. Conceived in Milkwood, born in a barn, wrapped in paper, left on a doorstep, big-headed and bass-voiced, she grew in the dark until long-dead Gomer Owen kissed her when she wasn't looking because he was dead. Now in the light she'll work, sing, milk, say the cow's sweet name, and sleep until the night sucks out her soul and spits it into the sky. In her lifelong love light, holily Bessie milks the fond lake-eyed cows as dusk showers slowly down over byre, sea, and town. Utah Watkins curses through the farmyard on a cart horse.
Gallop, you bleeding cripple!
And the huge horse neighs softly as though he had given it a lump of sugar.
Down in the dusking town, May Rose Cottage, still lying in clover and listening to the nanny goats chew, draws circles of lipstick round her nipples.
Run fast. I'm a bad lot. God will strike me dead. I'm 17. I'll go to hell.
She tells the goats.
You just wait. I'll sin till I blow up. She
lies deep, waiting for the worst to happen. The ghosts champ and sneer.
Jack Black prepares once more to meet his Satan in the wood. He grinds his night teeth, closes his eyes, climbs into his religious trousers, their flies sewn up with cobbler's thread, and pads out, torched and Bibled, grimly, joyfully, into the already sinning dusk.
Off to Gomorrah!
And Cherry Owen, sober as Sunday as he is every day of the week, goes off happy as Saturday to get drunk as a deacon as he does every night.
I always say she's got two husbands,
says Cherry Owen.
One drunk and one sober.
And Mrs. Cherry simply says,
And aren't I a lucky woman? Because I love them both.
Mr. Mog Edwards and Miss McGanway Price, happily apart from one another at the top and the SC end of the town, write their every night letters of love and desire. In the warm white book of Llaregub you will find the little maps of the islands of their contentment.
Oh, my Mark, I am yours forever.
And she looks around with pleasure at her own neat, never dull room, which Mr. Mog Edwards will never enter.
Come to my arms, Mafonwy.
And he hugs his lovely money to his own heart. And Mr. Waldo, drunk in the dusky wood, hugs his lovely Polly Garter under the eyes and rattling tongues of the neighbors and the birds, and he does not care. He smacks his live red lips. But it is not his name that Polly Garter whispers as she lies under the oak and loves him back. 6 feet deep, that name sings in the cold earth.
But I always think, as we tumble into bed, of little Willie Wee, who is dead, dead, dead.
The thin dusk thickens. A breeze from the creased water sighs the streets close under milk-waking wood. The wood whose every tree foot's cloven in the black, glad sight of the hunters of lovers, that is a God-built garden to Mary Ann the sailors, who knows there is heaven on earth, and the chosen people of his kind fire in Llaregub's land. That is the fair day farmhand's wantoning, ignorant chapel of bride beds, and to the Reverend Eli Jenkins, a green-leaved sermon on the innocence of men. The suddenly wind-shaken wood springs awake for the second dark time this one spring day.